In today's lesson, we're going to be using Photoshop to make a mood board. We'll be learning how to make a blank document, move multiple images into that document, how to resize and move those images around, and how to use layers to organize our design. A mood board is a visual representation of a specific theme, idea, or style, typically created using a collection of images, text, or other design elements. It is often used in the creative industry to explore, communicate the overall look and feel of a project. Our mood board's purpose is to design our dream bedroom. To make our own mood board, we need to start with a blank document. Once you have Photoshop open, you can click File, then New. This brings up a menu, and we can either select one of the pre-made templates or specify our own. For this project, I want us to make a custom size. Look along the right side and we can see a box to specify the width and height. These numbers represent the number of pixels in the image. A pixel is a single square that can be any color and makes up our image. Right now, mine is set to 512 pixels wide and 512 pixels tall. This image would have approximately 250,000 pixels. That's actually pretty low resolution. In contrast, 1080p or HD resolution video means the video is made up of images that are 1920 pixels wide and 1080 pixels tall. This would result in approximately 2 million pixels in the image. This results in a larger file size, but it also means the image can be made larger without looking blurry. It is a good idea to match your image size to your intended use. Putting in a really big number for the width and height will make a massive file which will slow down and be difficult to work on and share. If we don't need all those pixels, then it would be a waste to make a file that big. For this project, we are going to use 1920 for the width and 1080 for the height. I'll be looking for the size in the file you turn in. This should be a good balance between giving us enough space to work with while keeping a reasonable file size. Now click Create. We can see on our Layers section that we only have one layer. We can also see that it has a lock next to it. That lock prevents us from interacting with that layer in some ways. We'll come back to that in a bit. We need to collect some images for our mood board. We are looking for images that capture the look or feel we want to achieve. We should include an image of a color palette that will be used throughout our design. We can also include some photographs of texture to add some visual interest to the mood board. We are going to choose a font that we like and that matches our design. We might include some branding such as logos or color schemes. And lastly, we're going to put in some images of any decoration that will contribute to the overall atmosphere. I'm going to start by looking for a color theme. There are many options to help you generate a good color scheme, but Peloton.com is a great website that I'm going to use. I will play around with this for a bit until I get a color scheme that I like. I'm going to use the snipping tool to take a screenshot of the palette. I want to make sure that I am only screenshotting the palette, and then head back to Photoshop. Remember how I said the layer is locked? That means I need to make a new layer before I can paste in my palette. I make a new layer by clicking the new layer icon found at the bottom of the screen. See the new layer that appeared above the background layer? Now I can place my color palette using Ctrl and V or clicking Edit on the menu bar and then paste. I can now move my palette around with the Move tool. The Move tool might have been automatically selected when you paste the image. If not, it is on the top of the left toolbar, and it looks like a cross made of arrows. When this is selected, you can click on part of your image and drag it around. If my palette is too small or too large, I will want to adjust its size. Notice how my color palette has some white boxes on its corners and along its sides. Those are transform control points. If your palette doesn't have these control points, then click the box next to Show Transform Controls. Check out what happens to the top menu bar when I click one of the transform control points. Like the text menu in the last tutorial, this is a context-sensitive toolbar and will change depending on what you are doing or what tool you have active. If I want to make this palette bigger, I can click and drag one of the corner control points. Notice how it lets me make it bigger or smaller, but I can also squish it. If I want to make it bigger or smaller without it becoming distorted, then I want to lock the aspect ratio. The aspect ratio is the relationship between how wide and how tall an image is. I can lock the aspect ratio along the top toolbar by clicking the chain icon. Now, when I click and drag a control point, I can adjust my image size without distorting it. When I am happy with the size and placement of the palette, I will click the checkbox along the top menu bar. You shouldn't have any distorted images on your final mood board. To fill out the rest of my mood board, I can use something like Google Images to help me collect inspiration. I think honeycombs look cool, so I'm going to look for some images that have that texture. Here's a good one. I don't need a high-resolution image for my mood board, so I'm going to right-click on the image and select Copy Image. I can move back to Photoshop and use the Ctrl-V or Edit, Paste, and place my texture. See how pasting this image made it on a new layer? I can now use the Move tool to move this texture to where I want it to be and possibly adjust its size. Remember to click the checkbox along the top menu bar when you are done adjusting its size. The Move tool will only work on the layer I have selected. It would be pretty frustrating to constantly be searching for and selecting the layer that has what I want to move. Luckily, the Move tool has a setting that we can change to have it automatically select the layer we click on. Along the top menu bar, click the checkbox next to Auto Select. Now, when I click on a design element with my Move tool, it will select the right layer and I can move my elements around with ease. I'm going to repeat these steps until I have all the pictures I need for the mood board of my dream bedroom. I still need to select some fonts. I'm going to use the text tool to start a text box and I'm going to put my name in it. I'm going to pick a font that I like and I think matches the mood board. The text looks good, but doesn't quite match the theme. I'm going to change the color of the text to match a color from my palette. I need to select the text that I want to change the color of. I can drag select the text, then click this box labeled color. I can now choose a color two different ways. I can use the color picker to find a color I like, or I can use the eyedropper tool. What I want to do is choose a color from my palette already on my mood board. Notice how my cursor looks like an eyedropper if I move away from the color picker pop-up. That means it will sample any color in my image simply by clicking it. That color will also appear in the color picker pop-up. We can also see that color applied to our text. When I have a color I like, I can click OK and then leave the text tool by clicking the checkbox in the top menu bar. If I need to move my text, then I can use the Move tool just like with any of the images. I'm going to arrange my images. Have you noticed that some of the images are behind other images? If you look at the Layers section, we can see that some layers are above other layers, and that the layers on top can block the view of the layers below them. I can rearrange the layers by clicking and dragging them into a new position. When I am satisfied with my mood board, it's time to save it. Just like the text tutorial, I want to use the Quick Export tool to save a .png and upload it to Google Classroom. That is done by clicking File, Export, Quick Export PNG. If I'm working on this file over multiple days, or if I want to leave myself the option to make changes later to it without starting over from scratch, then I want to save it as a .psd. I do that by clicking File, Save, and selecting On Your Computer, then double checking that the Save Type box says .psd, giving it a nice name, and hitting Save.